Hi everyone, my name's Titus, and today we're going to be showing off a pretty cool feature of Unreal Engine called Chaos Destruction. This system allows you to import any static mesh into UE and add a geometry collection which can then be fractured. This fractured collection can then be clustered and simulated to break in a variety of ways, all in real time. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Alright, so starting off, to demo this, I'm going to be using the first person project template. I'm also going to have the starter content checked. Go ahead and give a name, choose a location, and then hit create. This tutorial is going to be more basic and kind of more of just an overview, just the quick functions of Chaos Destruction. I might do a part 2 that actually shows some of the more advanced features and stuff, but stay tuned for that, I guess. But alright, we got our default map loaded up. So to demo this properly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import a static mesh that I created from Blender. So we will create some folders. So let's go to our content, Control-Shift-N. I'm going to create a chaos folder. Control-Shift-N, I'm going to create a maps folder. And then Control-Shift-N, we're going to create an orc folder. I'm going to go inside orc and I'm going to import my FBX from Blender. I don't need the skeletal mesh. In fact, that will not work with Chaos Destruction, so make sure it's just a static mesh. So I'll hit import on that. And it's going to also import my materials, which I don't need, so I'm just going to delete those. Actually, I don't think I need any of these either, so I'll just get rid of them. Alright, but here we go. Right click, I will create a blueprint class. I'm going to do type actor, and I'm going to call it BP_orc. I'm going to double click, drag that up there, and in my content browser I can just simply shift select all my meshes, and then under the add function I can add multiple static meshes all at once, which is nice. And then I can shift select all the items in the components tree, and I can add a basic material so we can see it better, and I'll do a base material. Alright, so we can compile, save. Back in the viewport, I'm just going to drag in my orc, drag him around, and there we go. Alright, so there are two main basic components for the Chaos Destruction. In order to see them, go into your content browser settings and make sure the show engine content is checked. That will make it so the engine folder shows up, and you can run a simple search for field, and that'll bring up a bunch of things. There's, like I said, there's more functions to this system than just what I'm telling you now. These are just kind of the basics, but the FS anchor is one of the main ones, and then the other one is the FS master field, this one right here. So the names are, well, at least the name for the anchor is kind of self-explanatory. When you take a mesh and you cut it up a bunch of pieces, it's going to crumble, and maybe that's the effect you want. But if you want part of the static mesh to remain intact, you can put an anchor and scale it and set it to the appropriate position, and then your static mesh will only break to that point. So to demonstrate that, I will move this over here. I'm going to scale it up a bit and drag it down. I might actually need to scale it a little bit more. Yeah, that looks good. And then I'll bring it down into the floor like so. So now it's kind of prepped. Yeah, somewhere around there. Oops, didn't want to do that, but okay. So the anchor keeps the mesh in place. The master field is what breaks it apart. Now you can break the mesh with other meshes as well. So like if you're doing like a shooter game and you're spawning a projectile, if the projectile is just a mesh, you know, and it has simulate physics and it's got some mass, you can just use that to break it apart as well. The reason that gets tricky is if you have a collision component or a collider on the actual static mesh of the projectile, it's going to block the actual mesh from interacting with the material. So obviously you can just delete it, right? And that would work. The problem with deleting it though is you lose a lot of the functionality within Unreal, like on hit event and all the other things that kind of use it. So, you know, I wouldn't recommend going that route. I would recommend instead spawning the master field just on your projectile. And that's a much more elegant solution, and I'll kind of show you how that looks here in a second. But we can take the master field and we'll just put it over the orc like so. And then we're pretty much ready to break the orc apart. So now I can simply select the orc. I'm gonna go from selection mode into fracture mode. And I have to select new. We're gonna be working with mainly just two functions of the fracture mode. That's the generate section and the fracture section. The select, edit, and cluster, I might go over in a more advanced video. They're kind of, some of them are self-explanatory though, but so for now we're just gonna hit generate. I'm gonna choose my chaos folder and then hit create geometry collection. And then you can see the orc looks quite different. If you look at the breakdown, like the indexes and the level statistics here, you'll notice he's got two levels. Level 0 is 1, level 1 is 15. Level 0 is his main body. Level 1 are all his accessories, his little armor piece here, his horns, his loincloth, his belt buckle, his teeth, etc. So now that I have him in a geometry collection, I can simply select one of these fracture types. We'll do uniform, and I am going to fracture him just once for simplicity. So you can do multiple levels of fracture. I'm just going to do one with him, so I'm going to do 200 pieces. So your min and your max are basically how many cuts you got. 200 is quite a bit. I can come down here and then just hit fracture. We'll ignore a lot of these other settings for now. And he's fractured. If you want to see the result before you actually simulate it in game, you can simply press Shift E and you can tap it, and it will basically explode the mesh. If you want to bring it back together, you can hold Shift and press Q, and it will slowly bring the static mesh back together. You can also do that at the top here with the explode amount. It'll kind of come through there. Now you'll notice the mesh still looks weird. He's got that checkerboard. If you want to get rid of that, the shortcut is just Shift B, and then he'll go back to the way he was. And if you need to go back to the geometry view, just Shift B again, and it'll switch it back. So the way to do that in the viewport, I believe it's under General, and it's Show Bone Colors. So if I do Shift B, you'll notice that gets checked and unchecked, like so. And then the other shortcut, I'll just go over it now. Shift W and Shift S allow you to traverse through the different fracture levels. You'll notice right here in the top left. Shift W basically goes one direction, Shift S goes back. Now obviously it doesn't really make a whole heck of a lot of difference with him because we only got, you know, 3 levels of fracture technically. But sometimes if you're doing a more complex shape, you know, you might have 10 or 15. So it's an easy way for you to go through your different your levels as you're working with whatever simulation you're trying to get. But looking what we got, I'm going to go into the blueprint for the master field. I'm going to double click it, and I'm going to set a delay of 3 seconds. So that gives me time to actually see the simulation. So let's hit play. I can grab the gun and look over, and then you'll see he kind of breaks apart. Now you'll notice he broke completely apart. What happened to my anchor? Well, it's simple. just because you put an anchor in your scene doesn't actually mean it's going to work for the mesh. You'll want to select the mesh, which in this case, right here. And I will do select none, select all. In the outliner here, near the top, there's a initialization fields. If you hit the little plus sign, it'll add a field, so you can add an anchor. You can just use the little pipette or the eyedropper, and then select your anchor that you set in your scene. Now with that, if we hit play, we'll notice after 3 seconds, he kind of breaks apart, and then he didn't really break much further than that. The reason he didn't break any further than that is because the master field has a magnitude of 5,000. If we go back into the scene, the orc has a damage threshold, looks like 3 elements, of 500,000, 50,000, and then at the lowest level, 5,000. So he can take a lot of damage first. So we basically we'd have to shoot him or hit him with a bunch of fields before he'd completely break apart. Most of the time, that's the kind of simulation you want. You typically want your players, like if you're shooting a gun or a tank round or something, you don't want the first round to just completely end the mesh. You'll maybe want a few shots. So this is pretty normal. But just for this basic simulation, I'm going to hit the trash can to delete all the elements. I'm going to add 1 element, and I'm just going to set it to 500. And just to show you that that should be enough, when we look at him, he should break apart quite well this time. And there he goes, into little bitty pieces. And then you can see the, whoops, I kicked that. Most of them on the bottom half stay together. And that's the anchor doing its job. Even if I take the master field and I move it to the bottom first, like right around there, and I hit play, he should still remain intact, mostly. But that's the basic principle. Let's show you some of the other basic fracture types that we can do. Let's go back to selection mode. I am going to do file, new level. I'm going to do basic, create. Looks good. Move my player start over. I'm going to save current level as in my maps folder as level 1. All right. Now we're going to add some shapes. So let's add a basic shape. We'll do a cube. We'll bring the cube down. Looks good. If you have something in your scene, if you hold the Alt key and drag off an arrow, you can duplicate it, like so. I'm going to hold Alt, and I'm going to drag off a couple of these, 4, and I'll do maybe 5. Then I'm going to Shift select every other one, move that offset, and we're looking pretty good. All right, let's begin fracturing. So let's select our first cube. We'll go back from selection mode into fracture mode. Remember, under generate, we have to click new. I'm going to choose my chaos folder, leave the default name, just hit create geometry collection. Let's try a uniform fraction, and this time I'm just going to do 50, and I'll hit fracture. Again, if you want to see the simulation, Shift and E, you can tap it, and I'll show you what it looks like. Shift and Q to bring it back. I'm going to do Shift B to go back to material preview. We are done with that one. Moving on to the next one. We'll hit new, choose our chaos folder, create the geometry collection. This time I'm going to do a cluster. I'll hit fracture, and I'm just going to do Shift B because we're going to be done with that one. And we'll hit the third cube. We'll do new geometry collection. This time we'll do radial, and we'll hit fracture, and then Shift B, and on to the next one, and rinse and repeat. So this time I'm going to do planar. Now this one's kind of interesting. It creates a slice, and what you can do is you can drag the slice. It's kind of hard to see. There we go. It's a separate widget, and you can affect the transform as well, like so. So like I can have that set up there and hit fracture, and then I can grab it again and maybe, whoops, rotate it the other way. And we'll do red going up. Oops, blue, bring it down. And then we'll hit fracture again, just to give us something interesting. All right, and then Shift B for that one, we're done. Let's go to this last one. Actually, did we do that one already? Yeah, looks like we did. All right, I might add another cube. Yeah, I'm gonna add another cube because there's another one I wanna show. All right, we'll do Alt and click this out right there. Okay, so this one we will do a slice. This is my favorite one. Actually, before we do that, we have to hit New, Chaos, and create the geometry collection. For the slices, I'm gonna do 9 in the X, 9 in the Y, 3 in the Z. And then I'll hit fracture, Shift B. And did that do that? I didn't even see. Yeah, Shift B, it did. Okay. And then the last one, we'll do New, Chaos, create the geometry collection. This time I'm going to do Mesh. Brick is more better for like if you had like a wall, and it's a little bit of a pain to set up. So I'd have to, that one takes a little bit of time, so we'll skip that one for now. Maybe I'll do that in the advanced tutorial. The Mesh one, what it does is it uses a different mesh to actually do the fracture. So if I do a new basic shape, we'll do a cube, and then I'm going to scale this cube in the Z and the X. I'm going to try to make like a sword looking thing. I'm going to turn the snapping off there and just make this real skinny. Something like that. So we come over here under your cutter or your cutting actor, you can hit the little pipette or the eyedropper, and you can select your item that you're using the the actual fracturing with. And then I'm gonna do uniform random. What's 3 look like? Yeah, we'll try 3. Let's do it. Fracture, Shift E. That looks pretty weird, but alrighty. Shift Q and Shift B. All right, but that looks good. Up at the top too, you have a reset option. When you have a collection selected, if you hit reset, it undoes the the fracturing, so you can basically start from scratch. So if you're doing something and you didn't like the result, hit reset and you basically start over, rather than delete the mesh and do everything from scratch. But now the other thing I need to do is I don't have a gun, so let me go to the first person blueprints and add a gun pickup, so I have a way to destroy these things. All right, so let's come through the first one. Whoops. Oh wait, I still have the 3 seconds, I think. And I also had the sound. Hang on. Did I do that one? All right, wait a minute. Oh, we never did the gun, the projectile. So the reason that's not working is because there's a static mesh. If we go to the viewport, and there's that static or that collision component. So the collision component, maybe you can see it if I go to wireframe. There it is. So that collision component, it's on the outside of the static mesh, which is the sphere. So it blocks the spheres from actually doing the collision. So, well, the other thing that's not, the reason it's not working is because it's not simulating physics as well. So So the way we can get around that is, let's go to the event graph. There's a few things I'm going to do actually. Let me open up the weapon component. And let's go ahead and delete the sound because that was annoying. We'll hold shift, click there and click there. Compile, save, and no more sound. All right. So for the event hit on the projectile, so the little yellow thing right here, we can right click and do custom event. We'll call it chaos, or whatever you want to name it. And we're simply just going to spawn actor from class. And you could probably guess which class I'm going to spawn. It's going to be the master field. So fs_master field. That's the thing that destroys the fractures, remember? So make it easy. I'm going to take the spawn transform. Remember, the spawn transform is just a scale, rotation, and location. We can just drag that pin into our custom event, so it'll pass it through. And then from the event hit, we can drag off and do a call to chaos, or whatever you named it. And we simply have to get a reference to the actor's transform. So get actor transform. The reference to self is a reference to the yellow ball. So we'll plug that in there. So basically when this yellow ball is instantiated or created, it runs a event called hit when it collides against something, right? So that collider is going to take care of that. So it's going to hit our mesh. When it hits our mesh, it does this and it calls chaos. All chaos does is it spawns the master field. And when it spawns the master field, it spawns it at the location of the yellow ball. So basically, if we did this right, and we play, it's still not going to work right, but at least I don't think it will. Yeah. So after 3 seconds, I think this is going to blow apart. Yeah. So if you want it a little more, realistic, just come back to the master field, and near the top is our delay. We can set that to 0, so it's instant, or as close to instant as it can be, I guess. And now, if we shoot, it blows apart. There's that effect. We got that one, which kind of looks like that one. I didn't really see much of a difference. I think those are one's just the cluster. So that was the uniform, that was the cluster. This one's probably radial. Yeah, that's the radial. So that's better for targets that are skinnier. This one is planar. Yeah, that's the planar one. So that's the little knife cuts we made. And this one is the slice. This is my favorite. That one's really satisfying. I don't know why. And then this one was the mesh. So it's using, this object to actually break apart or make the cuts anyways. So kind of interesting. You can, obviously it's going to depend on the mesh you're using to break it apart, but you can get a lot of interesting effects there. And then just one other example I'll do is just we can add a simple shape cube, and we will scale it in the X and Y. And we are going to add a anchor. So we'll drag an anchor out, and we will scale the anchor in the X. So we're going to try to make basically a wall. Kind of like that, and move it up. All right, and then we'll select the wall. We'll click new, choose chaos, and we'll just type new at the end. Create a geometry collection. I'm just going to do uniform. I'm going to fracture it 50. And then I'm actually going to do a second fracture at 75. So this is a fracture and a fracture. So Shift E, you can see the simulation looks pretty good. Shift Q, bring it back. Shift B, go back to our material preview. And remember, if I don't set the anchor, it's going to break apart. Right? So we select that at the top. There's a initialization field. We hit the little plus sign, and then you can just hit the little pipette and select your anchor. And now this time, it should only break at the top. Like so. Uh-oh, that one hit me pretty good. Alright. Alright people, so we're going to cut it here, try to keep it short. Keep in mind the Chaos Destruction system also integrates with the Niagara and the audio mixer, so you can get some pretty realistic cinematic level sequences. For the more complex destruction simulations, you'll want to use the cache system to have them play at runtime, so it's less of a hit to your game's performance. It's more advanced, so maybe I'll cover that in maybe like a part 2. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and see you on the next one.